before we, I guess, go down the rabbit hole, I'm going to pop in a Leonard Zinard. Where's the camera? Which one? This one? Oh, here you go. Leonard Zinard right here, 6 milli vanilli. There we go.
This episode is sponsored by Zen. I've never tried it before, but it sure is. Hey, so this is going to be part 2. We stayed here, we debriefed for a second, and now we're back. So I want this episode to be diving off the deep end. I want to dive pretty deep into injury. I really want to think about it on a deep level. I want to answer some questions like, can we eradicate this? Like, is that possible? Do you think that's possible in the game of baseball? Okay, if so, how? Maybe we can't eradicate it, but like, can we reduce it by 3/4? You know what I'm saying? Like, can we really challenge ourselves? And, baseball, I always tell people, they're like, why did you get injured? And I'm like, I throw 100 and I throw 3 or 4 times a week. I don't want to say it's inevitable, but I'm asking my body to do some crazy things. And while I do challenge myself in the off season and in season to try and prepare my tissues for the stress I'm about to handle, like you said in the talk this weekend, your arm is going to change angles. So you're going to stress a little bit different tissue as you move. Mm-hmm. You're going to throw different pitches. You're going to do different things because you're trying to get that guy out. And you didn't train that perfectly in that way, so how do I train every facet of tissue that I'm going to possibly use at the highest level and prepare it and keep it above the demands of the game? Those are some of my questions as a player. I would like to play for the next 6 years and get my 10-year big league pension, right? So how can I, a double Tommy John guy, or how can a newly drafted guy, like, what would be y'all's advice to them? How do we take their body, take my body to the next level and mitigate this and just reduce it down to not a thing anymore?
Well, can I take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
all you.
The one thing, getting away from the objective data for a second, and the one thing that you do that I wish more players did, especially going through the return to performance and getting back in competition, is that you actually listen to your arm and you look at the objective data as well. Now, when you look at your arm strength, you know where to fix. You know what's fatiguing, you know what's not recovering, you know what's got the deficits or weakness, you know what's imbalanced. You can get that stuff. But it all comes down to the player's ability to communicate. Communication to your coaches and having the bravery to say, hey, I'm not feeling great today. This is kind of backing up what I think. It's not like, this is why I like the strength objective data too, because a player might go in kind of hanging, not like just physically not feeling good, but then all of a sudden my arm's super strong. It changes the mentality a little bit. Like, to nail this injury bug, right, we have to really understand fatigue. Fatigue, I don't believe velocity is the injury risk. I told you I definitely don't think biomechanics has anything to do with it. It does. You need biomechanics for performance. But in terms of health, you got to be able to handle the loading on the body. Remember, the magnitude, the vector, the rate. But when you have that information, as a player, we want the process in this game, for me, and at least in my business, is to be very player-led. The player's telling us what they're seeing. The player makes things more dynamic too. And that's what you do. You have control of your career. Mm-hmm. Like, you can even hear the assertiveness of how you go about, I take certain things that I like, but you're the CEO of Kova, but you're the CEO of your own performance journey.
Correct.
And players, they need to understand, and parents need to do this too, when it comes to pitching. You can't use words like to your athlete when their arm's sore and you say, listen, man, you're letting your team down. Mm-hmm. Like,
don't say that.
Come on. Yeah. It's like, dude, we're in the championship and I know your elbow hurts, but suck that up. Get out there. That's how you're pushing someone from the verge of being hurt, who is actually telling you there's something going on, to a full blown big issue. Yeah. So, getting to that point of eradicating injuries, it's just understanding when you're not functioning well, right? And having those conversations. Now, we have this level 1 certificate course. I want all your athletes to take it. It's only really good until, January 15th, okay, for this free course. But in the course, we talk about how to individualize pitch counts. And one of the things that happens, this is where I think we can really nail injuries, is that when you got guys that are really strong and you have that objective information, they're saying, I feel great. You're able to give them more. You're not don't look at arm strength testing and say, I'm going to just take away from this player all the time. You want to give them more, right? But then you're going to have other players. And a lot of times I see relievers because you don't get a lot of breaks, right? That you have to say, okay, if I can get more, let's just say out of a starter, now those relievers that have to fix things, they got more of an opportunity. Hey, I don't have to go back to back with him. He's trying to build strength here. I got to dial down the notch for his throwing workload. The highest intensity, training he could possibly have is competing, So, that's in my opinion, of where we can go. But we have to, as coaches, we have to give our athletes the opportunity to talk about when they're not feeling right, and we have to make sure we don't look at them and kind of demasculate them. Like your masculinity is associated, I can go, I'm a warrior, my arm feels like it's going to fall off. But, the thing is imagine you said something that day, they gave me treatment, every couple throws it hurts. It feels good for a little bit, or my warm-up takes me so long still, I'm not feeling anything. These are things that are you can't ignore pain. Your arm might not feel 100% all the time, right? You got objective data kind of back you up, but you have to be in a place to communicate.
Yeah. I think you nailed that. That is a really big issue in professional baseball, especially. You don't want to, I've felt that before myself, where I maybe have felt, sore or hurting a little bit, and I'm in the bullpen. I'm like, I'm the dude. They need me now, and I got to go in. I don't care. I have to go. Let's go. Pop some, some Advil and go for it, And I think that is something that a lot of baseball players do. They talk about pitcher candy, right? Advil, popping Advil, painkillers, and go pitch. And I think communication has a lot to do with that. And I think communication stems from an understanding of the human body, because we used to have a lot of our when the athlete walks in, hey, how you feeling today? Oh, I feel great. Oh, you do? Okay, perfect. Let's go throw.
All subjective.
And that was completely subjective, right? And that's where the the objective data comes in, and it also is teaching the athlete, hey, you don't feel good. You said you feel good when you throw in. You came in, you just did the ArmCare test, and now let's go talk about these scores real quick. Why do you think you tested bad? Oh, well, Jimmy was talking to me while I was testing. Okay, well, then let's go test one more time and give it a shot, right? And if nothing changes, then it's hey, are you actually hurting? And you have that really good communication. But you're right. I think we need to not associate it with masculinity, the warrior. As much as you want to, and you want to be out there for your boys. That's the cool part about having a team, right? But there's a line, and you just got to make sure you don't cross the line, because that's where injuries happen. What about you? What do you got on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big problem in the game, pro and youth too. Probably maybe more youth, from the other side, the parent side and the coach side.
Like you said, the championship game, come on.
Yeah.
You're our best pitcher.
Don't be soft, kid.
Yeah.
It's well, my arm's been hurting for 3 weeks. It's and then now they create that habit of if they don't get hurt, later on, they're going to, I think that becomes sorry, the mic's cutting out. I think that becomes an issue long-term if it doesn't happen in the moment. So I think the communication we have with the athletes is super important. And then I think that was a big piece as well. And then I think you touched on the biomechanics and kind of objectively looking at that. And then you were well, what if I throw differently? Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that just kind of brings up another kind of school of thought. We talked about the strength testing and isolation and monitoring and measuring that. Talked about the physics of the throw and how that can potentially be beneficial. And I want to kind of go into that a little bit more, and then now we're kind of getting into respecting the complexity of the game in terms of the throw and how each throw is different. And and I know you said this with Eugene, where it's well, yeah, of course, not every throw is the same, but the best in the world have a smaller range of change, right?
Yes.
Which is like, I think for the most part, we know that. But I also think that depending on the mound, depending on the situation of the game, depending on all these other external factors, that's what kind of leads to what, the movement behavior is. So I think that it's like, well, do I need to really worry about that? Is that like a piece that like adds value to the athlete? I don't know. Like, let me think about this. But whenever you look at it in that way, I think that, there's a place for isolation with the training, like training strength in isolation, like is good for you, right? But then also from a throwing program standpoint, if we just put the guys in a vacuum where it's like radar, objective testing, 75 feet, 68 miles an hour, right? Is that the game?
Oh man,
That's not the game, right? So I think that's where, you do all that stuff because it's good, but then from a throwing standpoint, like throwing different stresses at them to not only obviously prepare tissue, like because it's doing the thing, but then like from a psychological standpoint and feeling comfortable with your throw, I think that's another piece and kind of like avenue that doesn't get talked about enough. Like how you feel does matter, and like stress is stress, whether it's like the actual stress from the activity you're doing, or it's the internal stressors that you have based off of your personality traits and how you see the world, right? So if I can create an environment for an athlete where maybe I know that if he's in that vacuum and he gets out of it, not only is he not going to feel safe, he's probably not going to be as prepared. If I can expose him to like, hey, let's throw from shortstop, you're good, right? Hey, let's throw an Indian club, let's throw a football, let's throw a plyo, let's throw a baseball, right? Now we're kind of respecting the game in context where there is variability there, right? It's not to say that it's not done logically and programmed in a way where hey, like if it's a guy coming off an injury, like we have to be smart about this. However, if we don't touch on it and this guy gets hurt again, I'm going to feel like, I didn't do what I need to do. So I think that just brings up another kind of like school of thought there, where like no throw is the same, and we must respect that, and we must find a way to put it into what these guys are doing on a daily basis. And it's also athlete dependent as well. So that complexity builds on complexity. But if you look at it in that way, I think that brings up the ideas whenever you are sitting down and designing programs. So.
Yeah, I think you nail a lot. Like, so I was part of what I did at Penn was studying Tommy John surgery. Like that's kind of looking at all the injury data, right? And this really dovetails with what you're saying, is that out of all the players, as far as the data on Tommy John surgery, it's lowest in an infielder. And one of the reasons is that generally an infielder will throw from like 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. If they're stepping left, generally it'll be a lower thrower. They get closer, sometimes it's an underhand, right? So they have this wide range of variability, okay? But then when you start looking at pitching, like that kind of variability, like an infielder has a pretty, big range. Like basically you're looking at trying to hit someone around the chest, like hips to chest, something like that, right? But when it comes to a pitcher, it's like you got to aim small and miss small. And this speed accuracy trade-off is a problem too. I throw harder, you might have less control, right? And then you end up having more overuse. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. But what you're talking about is how I believe in all things training, is that you train with variability, but you compete with more invariability so that you're consistent, more precision, at least when it comes to pitching. So like I agree with a lot of what you're doing or you're thinking about. And then, kind of like when you talked about internal and external stresses, that's where I do like the strength data, because like I said, like you're neurologically going to be messed up. You will. You get a fight with your girlfriend or your significant other and you're not sleeping. These things show up, and altering tissue. You could take the same training, the same exercise, let's just say. You can manipulate the volume. You can manipulate the speed, the tempos. You can manipulate your body position. Like these are some things that we're running, one of my run, jump, and throw combines here. But like talking about, there are differences between me standing and doing some kind of band work and me being in a tall kneeling position, right? The training, in my opinion, has to be very highly variable to handle, any of these stresses. And then, when you're kind of in a place where you're throwing the same way and you're getting used to these loads, you're managing fatigue. I just want to talk a little bit about mechanics because I know I've looked at some of your data, right, TJ? The things that do cause an increase in joint loading, because I study biomechanical compensations. A few things increase joint load. The number one thing that, in my opinion, is early trunk opening, right, which happens when our arms are fatigued because now there's more leg of the arm, but lean. So one of the things I really like about your delivery is that
trunk
lean. Trunk lean. So when I watch your delivery, you have a much linear approach with your trunk. Your trunk, you're not pulling your trunk towards your glove side and trying to really create more pull on your arm. That lean, because I was like, okay, if certain your arm angle and your lean angle can really drive up your elbow torque. I'm like, what causes that lean? Right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you can see in creating that lean is a lack of long lever strength. Now you think about these ArmCare programs, right? In variety, you can look at your teams, and I'm not saying you can discredit anything that they're doing, but I find there's too much done with a bent elbow, and there's too much done that's below the shoulder line, side lying, or even if they're manuals, okay? But the long lever position is important to maintain accuracy. So if my strength goes down in my arm, so if I'm losing release point, especially in elevation, I only can lean. If my arm's coming down, I can't hold it there. And so those are things too, like I look for biomechanically, and it's important, like if anybody's listening to this, it's a team biomechanist, is making sure that the data is running and it's out there. If you don't have everything to look at, right? Look at stride length compression. Did they lose lower body power, right? If they're shortening their stride length, okay, over the course of games or from game to game. But look at what the trunk's doing. And then, the arm position in abduction, this is called, like when you're raising your arm. Those things I think are really important in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I've seen, you gave me some pointers and some exercises to do. And I noticed my strike rate was really high this year, almost to a fault where I was getting in trouble where I'd get to an 0-2 count and I would still throw a strike and leave a ball in the zone. I'm like, I got to throw a ball here. Like, I got to figure this out. So, so some of the long lever, especially like eccentrics far from the body, double arm too. Like I know you always have me do the barbell out and like eccentrically lowering it, has really helped my release point stay consistent. Which is very important for staying healthy. So like, sticking on the strength kind of aspect of things, people throw around the word, minimally effective dose and mega dosing. So how do you guys see that applied in high performance in trying to not only mitigate injury, right, but also be the best? Like how do we increase, high performance in those areas with those terms, minimally effective dose and high dosage and mega dosage?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's a problem, right? So it needs a solution, and it's at the elbow and the shoulder. I think we respect kind of like the entire throw, but I also think that if you can be extremely, I'll use this word, if you can be extremely robust, like in those areas, then like you're probably going to put yourself in a better spot, taking into account like the variability of the throw, right? So that's where I think that there's logic behind it. I think that training on both ends of the spectrum probably should be touched, just like low intent throwing and high intent throwing, but it probably shouldn't be done all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think that like Ryan's program, like you clearly have to establish like what are the movements or like the things that we're going to try to build, right? Whether that's shoulder rotation or the scaption position, like, mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Like those are the things now like we want to increase those areas, the strength, right, of those areas and get those as robust as possible. So I think that, if you want to create change, you have to have enough stimulus. So like, you know, and sets and reps, like, you know, it could be sets and reps or load, but I think that there has to be enough stress there to create change, but you don't want to induce too much stress to where you're not creating change and or you're affecting the skill from like a programming standpoint. So I think it depends on the guy, but I do believe that, you know, you start with a little and then you probably do a little bit more in terms of volume and intensity with exercises. And then you also have, like I said, you have to clearly define like what those exercises are. Mm-hmm. And then I also think that kind of expanding on, you know, strength, right? I think that's one thing. And I think that lays a foundation for other, you know, variable contractions of the muscle. And I think that those variable contractions do take place in the throw. It's not one muscle contraction. So I think that from an exercise standpoint, we layer a foundation of strength and we build volume and intensity in those, you know, specific exercises that we value. And then from there, then we add in the variability component that we brought up, and that can be from, you know, positioning standpoint, right? And it could also be from a velocity standpoint. And I think if you're not touching on that and expanding upon it, and you're only going for one thing, right, then we're not respecting what we're going for, which is creating a more robust system in general. And that goes back into like Eugene, right? It's like if we don't respect the throw and like what a good throw may be based off of objective biomechanics data, right? And then also like subjective, like, hey, like, does this look good? It's like both of those things probably play. The objective data is going to tell you, it's going to tell you what you need to know, but we also know that every throw is different and every situation is different as well. So we have to respect that in a way. So I think, yeah. So minimum effective dose works, you know, maximum effective dose works. Like
progressive overload works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We know that.
Yep.
What do you got on that, Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, when I design programs, the first thing I want to look at is like, what are the recovery opportunities for the athlete, right? The program is very different for a starter than it would be a reliever, right? And then even diving even deeper into a reliever, some guys are more like nocturnal. They turn on a lot to train after games, and some guys are very, you know, I guess morning people. Mm-hmm. When it comes to like an injured situation, players had an injury in their background, I try to see how can I maximize a lot of their recovery, and generally training at night has been helpful, at least for relievers and for starters. The big thing that I have, like just as a simple rule when it comes to training, whether it's a mega dose or if it's a minimally effective dose, it's like 6, 6, 6, 6, quadruple 6 is my rule. Okay. It's got the devil's number in there. No more than 6 exercises when it comes to the arm in a training session. Okay. No more than 6 sets. Okay. No more than 6 reps. All right. Mm. And no more than 6 seconds in eccentric. Mm. Okay. Now you can go very minimal within that. Could be 2 sets, you know, changing all these different variables to build strength. My programming is highly focused on maximum arm strength. They get endurance. Every throwing athlete gets endurance in throwing programs. Mm-hmm. It's something over and over and over again to build capacity. What happens is the kind of the world we live in with baseball, it's a couple things. People already have this self-fulfilling prophecy that your arm is porcelain. And so now you're going to be lying on a table and doing very light loads, and you might have 10 exercises, 2 sets at 12 reps, right? Now you're encouraging more like metabolic fatigue. So, you know, when in terms of picking the dosage, you got to understand, I need to build max strength. Here's this person's schedule. This is where it has to go in. I've had some guys that are really dead set. They're like, no, I don't want to train after games. I want to go home to my kids. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to spend an extra half hour when I'm done, you know, put my shorts on and come in and work out. Like, you got to have a little give and take. But I will tell you this, and this is in science when it comes to starters. And traditionally, when I first started training in Major League Baseball, training players, is that the second day after a starter pitched was their heaviest training day. Okay. Now in science, they have proven that the day after pitching competitively is the worst day for your autonomic nervous system. The worst. Okay. And it improves as time goes on. So, it'd be like, yeah, we're going to crush legs and blah, blah, blah. But really, what we're doing is like, okay, here's the game. Now we're going to excite them again to their nervous system to the point where we're boosting adrenaline because we're pounding them. But here's the other kicker. A lot of times in a 5-day rotation, there are teams that put the bullpen on the second day. Okay. That's your highest form of training in a day. So it's like game. All right. Now it's crush lift. Right. And now it's like, a 40 pitch pen for some guys.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, now day 3, they might, if they do a split routine, they might do an upper body lift, and then you got your game. You got your day 4, and then you got your game. Now, the way I look at starters, if they can handle it, is that the best part of training a starter, if they have a really good game or they have a really bad game, it's going to influence a pretty decent training stimulus after the game, right? They're either pissed off and they want to blow off steam, okay? Or they have this euphoric feeling, where they've gone 7 innings or 8 innings and they've just carved and they're happy to go and train, right? The thing is, you got to fight that day after competition. So on those days, that's the mega dose. They've pitched, I'm training them. And the next day, when I know they're fried, right? That's something that's more parasympathetically driven. I've mega dosed them, okay? And then I've basically given them that high level of recovery. And on top of that, now I got some adjustability because my day 2, then I might do my lower lift and I might do my upper lift after day 3, after the bullpen. There's a lot of ways, but the first thing is like kind of understanding that athlete's schedule and where is recovery, whether I can do a mega dose or a minimally effective dose. If they're on the road, it might not be possible, right? Like at home, the thing I loved about the Angels and the coordinators there at the time and the coaches, they didn't care about having a guy sit and watch the rest of the game and watch their team. They're like, dude, get in there. We know you got to get your work in, and like kids like showered up by the time the game's over. The starter's in there, he's kind of being patient, waiting to kill the spread, right? But
TJ just grabs the spread.
Yeah. So the thing is like, that's again another piece of making sure that the athlete is robust. It's first start with recovery, right? In the control and communication, because I had great relationships with the major league pitching coaches. So myself, the strength staff and the medical staff, we could talk about all the things that we need to do. I mean, it's intuitive what you do in the weight room. It is intuitive what's on the field because we see the throwing programs going on. What's not intuitive, what happens sometimes in the athletic training room. You don't see that. So they could be adding to more work that you have not, that you haven't communicated about.
Yeah.
So
me as a player, I see the multi-department side of things. I see there is a strength department, there is a pitching coaches, and then there's the athletic training, there's medical staff, right? And while they do all communicate with each other, there is a disconnect sometimes. I've brought that to their attention as a player. I've been like, hey, he's telling me to do this and you're telling me to do that. Like, why am I doubling up here? Have you guys talked about, I call them out on it, but some players don't. They're like, oh, I guess I'm going to do it again. And that goes back to the being your best coach thing, right? Yeah. And I've seen it improve over time. And that's what I kind of want to go into. The next thing is, from a player standpoint, when I was at Weatherford College, I threw long toss every single day. And that was in 2014, fall of 13, spring of 14. And wow, has the game changed since then, right? There was no such thing as Rapsodo or TrackMan. Radar guns were very rarely used. It was you only had access to a radar gun if you were throwing at like a big time stadium and they had a gun behind the dish. Everything was subjective. It was what the pitching coach saw to, the transition of, hey, this is a Rapsodo and this is how it's beginning to read the ball flight, to TrackMan data, to biomechanics data, to markerless data. Like everything is kind of like feel like it's ramped up.
a pulse.
Yeah, it's a pulse. Like throw, torque, and arm speed, and like all these things. And while it can be a little overloading from the athlete, and that's why some athletes do, try to push away from it. Like, let me just play ball, right? There's the balance. I've talked about this before. There's the balance of like diving too far into it and not being a student of it at all. But for you guys, and how has the industry improved in the rehabilitation process over the last 5 to 10 years? I mean, you guys have both been in it. You were personally in it from a, hey, we got 10 throws at 90 feet and then 20 throws and now you're writing programs, and I know your programs don't look the same as that anymore, right? It does a little bit, but there's some balance to that now. And then you're on the other side of that as well. You were with the Angels. And so like, how has everything changed, in the last 5 to 10 years? And then going from there, I want you guys to answer what else needs to change?
Yeah. So, I mean, tons of improvements. Like it's gotten better. I think the main problem, in the past was not looking at everything. And then now we're starting to do that a little bit more. And then we're also creating objective ways to measure it. So that helps as well. But I like what you said with kind of like the balance, because if you're all just like, 10 throws at 60 feet, or you're just like pulse TrackMan, like, I don't know if that's the way either. So it's you got to be an artist with it, I think. But yeah, I mean, especially from a throwing program standpoint, I think I think for me, it just starts with, understanding what demands we're preparing ourselves for. Right. And it's like, well, first place there is like, oh, this guy throws 95. So we probably need to like progressively overload him and slowly like introduce him to, more stress as we go. Right. And allow his body to adapt to that. Like in my case specifically, I think that, I did your standard, return to throw. And I was a guy who was up to 100, and my first live, I was like 4 to 6 or something like that.
I remember.
And I remember like, whoa, I have not done that. And at the time I didn't know anything, but I knew how I felt. It was like, I have not moved like that. And my body was not prepared for those demands. Yeah, that's how I say it now.
I remember you were sore, like really sore after that.
Oh yeah. I was probably messed up for 2 weeks after that. And like, I did the throwing program, and yeah, so throwing programs have definitely improved in terms of monitoring like intensity, whether that's through radar guns or, pulse or some sort of objective measure. And then I guess kind of getting outside of throwing programs, you kind of get into the training a little bit. Obviously that's improved as well. I think, it used to look like just tons of passive, like, the KPIs like range of motion, and once we're there, like do your throwing program and smell you.
A lot of long distance running too.
And long distance running too. And that goes back into like, I think, and this is where it's like people outside of pitching, like understanding the demands, right? And understanding like what the guys are going to do holistically, and then implementing that in their training. Like if I just do passive range of motion, that's probably not going to serve me well. Like it might, but probably not. And then if I only like bench and squat and deadlift, like it might serve me well, but probably not fully, right? If I just do long distance, you know what I mean? So I think each kind of section of the training is becoming more refined as we go. So I'm happy with, where it's going right now, but there's definitely a lot of stones to be unturned. And I think it starts with like the conversation that we had previously, with the whole debate. It's just being open to what those other things are. And then just like how you have, built a wealth of knowledge in what you do with exercise physiology and biomechanics, like do that everywhere. Like you can't do it. Right. But like, I think that's really where the power's at. And that's like from staff to staff, right? Staff person to staff person, like the pitching coach, the strength coach, the medical professional involved. I think that as long as that is at the forefront, we're going to be in a better spot. So yeah, no, let's keep doing it.
I think, when it comes with the experiences I've had either in professional baseball, but now in private industry, serving players, is that I don't use technologies that I can't coach from. Like, for example, when I was in professional baseball, a lot of people that had like a sport director, sports science role or those kinds of things, they couldn't do anything with a major league player. They were doing everything with the minor leagues. It was like the petri dish because the players don't have the same power, right? But when it comes to like the highest level performers, and it should be you should treat even the amateurs the same way, is that they have to see that you are using this technology to help them, that you are actually creating some kind of implemented approach to execute a plan based on that data. Or else they feel like they're guinea pigs. Like, well, why are you collecting this on me if I'm not seeing that you're doing anything with it? So that's kind of the first thing when you're talking about the technology integration of all these things. The other thing is that I do believe in professional baseball, the RTP, the return to throwing program, it's really moved a lot. But when it comes to the amateurs, like if you guys aren't responsible for writing that return to performance throwing program, what they're getting is a sheet of paper. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a sheet of paper that has been published since 1974.
Yep.
That was done by some prominent orthopedic surgeons. Some of them never thrown a baseball.
Yep.
Some of them have and some of the programs have brokenness in it. It's like you throw for a bit and you cool the guy down and you throw again. What is that? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, why wouldn't you let a pitcher write this up? Because they know if I'm waiting for 5 minutes, I'm just letting my arm cool off when like I'm trying to throw and stay warm. That's wrong, right? So, you know, you're doing things that like are data led, like, and that's what I love about at least the strengthening tool. Like, I'm just hoping more people can integrate this, especially physical therapists. We were talking about this today. I got one player that's reached out to me. He's 11 years old. He's just turned 12. He's had a Tommy John surgery, right? They last for 5 years in a regular at the top level, right? Unless you take care of it. And you, like, the one thing about you guys going through your RTP, it taught you a lot about your body. It taught you to be very serious about certain things that you might not have seen. But when it comes to a kid, they go to that physical therapist. They might be there for a month max, and now they're onto their own devices. Here's your training home program. Here's your throwing program. I'm not monitoring it. This is where, like, the baseball businesses, I know it's really focused on performance, right? And people are paying for the kids to throw faster, you know, to be seen, these things. But, you know, the business operation can also say, hey, I know you're not getting what you need in the sports medicine side of things. And you come to us, like, you have an advantage. Like, any kid that's in this area who's ever had an arm injury should be training at Kova. Like, that's non-negotiable. You have your influence there. You're dealing with the best in the world that has to be prepared, right? But when I look at these things, I'm like, man, they don't even follow. Like, they don't even follow the rules of periodization, right? So periodization is that if I increase in intensity, I need to decrease volume. Okay? All right? So as I start throwing at harder efforts, right? I'm not throwing as long. That's what should happen. But what happens in these throwing programs, man? It's exponential periodization. Throw more, throw harder. Throw more, throw harder. And the body doesn't respond that way. Like, the way I look at training, how I normally write my programs, it's non-linear. So there's some times where, you know, you have very high volume, okay, and very low intensity. And then you have this high intensity and low volume, but you got to have a deload periods where you have very low volume and low intensity, right? And it has to be in stages. Like, I look at the progression of a throwing program, and it's got to be like this wave. Highs and lows, highs and lows. The progression is going upward in terms of improving their robustness or capacity. But the way that we're doing it, man, it's frightening. Like, it is destined to fail because the tissue just doesn't have time to take a breath. Like, you're just like, nah, you know, we're going to, I don't know, maybe even with the pitch counts, right? It's like, we're going to start at 5 and 75. Then we're going to go blah, 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 6 to 90. Like, it just keeps accumulating. And people are not doing the job of checking the engine light. That's why I say the arm strength piece. It's like, I go into the mentality with somebody, especially a healthy person, healthy player. You are going to look at having a maximum, like high intensity workout every day. That's in your mind. I'm ready for it. But the strength data is going to dictate. It's going to tell me when to down regulate, right? It's going to tell me, like, I look at a few things. There's downloads. Downloads means I'm either going to drop the volume, okay, or I'm going to drop the intensity. I don't do them together. And then you have the deload where you're really trying to lower everything. But you have these options knowing strength. And I want to see the RTP programs follow that. Like, think about I think about the economics of this. This is why I think your position is so important and should be paid a great deal. If you have a program, let's just take TJ, and you can get him back on the field 3 weeks earlier, you know what kind of money is saved?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right? And the problem is, if you go with a protocol and you're looking at this like, man, this guy's strength is through the roof and we're still throwing at 90 feet, you're not helping the team. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is, and I think everybody, for me, the best coaches are getting players back to optimal the fastest, right? There has to be a sense of urgency. And there has to be that conversation to say, look, I know your protocol says we have to wait like 9 weeks before he can get X, Y, and Z, but I'm telling you, his body is telling us otherwise. This player can help us. Like, you coming back, I know, and these are things that people have to understand when players have injuries. It's a sensitive region, and especially you've had a couple. Going back to the return to performance program is the last thing you want to do, right? So there's certain players that they know, like, and you're looking at your strength, you're looking at the progression, you know how you feel to dial it back. That's another thing too, is that you have the assertiveness to keep the pace, but you have the objective data when you let the player determine the pace, but you tell that front office, hey, look, he's checking out. Let's just keep moving him along, because I'm telling you, if you get the player back on the field earlier, increases your chances of winning, right? Saves the team money, right? And you do it the right way, coming out of it stronger than when they went in. Like, that's why the return to performance, where they are. It's actually a bad name. Return to performance should be like excel in your performance. Mm-hmm. When they leave, they should be like
better,
a beast in everything. So,
yeah, I think, honestly, the printed off sheet of paper, here's your throwing program, is the most disservice to a individual that you could possibly do. I think there's a good framework sometimes to maybe work off of, but I completely agree with you where it is completely athlete dependent. Rehab should not be here's what we do with everyone and you're getting the same program. It's just not, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. I think it's a good framework to work off of. This is what we've done in the past and it's been successful. Great. Let's work off of it. Oh, this guy's having more pain than that. We have to adjust. Right. Oh, this guy's actually progressing really well. Let's adjust. Right. And the ArmCare device, going back to that, gives you a really good insight to the arm. Right. But I think, I personally think, distances are not good measures of return to throw programs. I think if you have a return to throw program and it says this many throws at this distance, this many throws at this distance, you really don't know what you're doing. You don't know what throwing is like. You just don't. Because if you go out and I ask you to throw a ball 60 feet, you can throw that ball 60 feet from anywhere from 0 miles an hour. Well, you won't make it from 1 mile an hour to 100 miles an hour. Yeah. Right. And when you're dealing with athletes and you're dealing with complexity and, I think that's why I think Modus, neck styles, the arm sleeve, radar guns, subjective data, that is, sorry, wait, is that the right word?
Objective.
Yeah, objective. Sorry, objective data that gives you an insight on like what the true intensity and then you are dictating the volume based on that. I mean, that is really the way to go. And I've noticed that like the Reds are transitioning to that, and they have transitioned to that. There's a lot of radar gun, while they do have distances, hey, we're going to try to get you to this today. Hey, we want when you're making this throw, don't throw it that high. You need to throw it on an arc, but you don't throw it on a line, throw it on an arc. And like they give you, flexibility in the throwing program, but they're also monitoring you with objective data.
Yep.
So I just think that, and I've seen it time and time again. This is my throwing program. I actually just got back and I hurt my arm this summer, and this is my throwing program from my PT that he wrote, and he's never thrown a baseball before.
Correct.
It's just wrong. It's just completely wrong. And we get, actually, you say you should be training with us. We get a lot of those kids that come in and train with us now that are starting to realize that, some people don't know what they're talking about, and they give you these programs that have distances and volumes and intensities that are just doing this, that have random breaks in them with volumes on the back end. And it's not carried out great by the athlete. There's no one monitoring them. Right. You're mostly, so I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the professional world has done a really good job of, because there's money on the line in the professional world, but I think amateurs is the next step that need to. We as the private sector need to step up our game, and I think we're doing a great job. But I want to hold like local PTs, local doctors that are writing return to throw programs to do some research and to really think about what they're writing for someone and how it's being carried out by the athlete, because I hope that, they want what's best for the athlete as well. And if you're doing a surgery on someone, or if you're helping someone return to throw because they have a strained flexor or whatever it may be, a 14-year-old, you want them to return as well, right? I hope. So I would challenge them to also do some research and figure out, what are professional organizations doing? How are they carrying out, and how are they getting guys back? And then how can I hold myself accountable and help these athletes get back? Because at the end of the day, if you're not doing it because of that, then you're in the wrong profession. At the end of the day, for us, it's all about our athletes. It's all about maximizing their potential. And, we want what's best for them, and sticking to the old status quo, the 1970, 1990, throwing program that was approved by somebody that worked then, that's great. Like that's like driving a 1990s, car and trying to race a Tesla and being like, I'm going to win because this worked in the 90s. Like, no, that's not how it works.
Yep.
You have to grow, and you have to challenge yourself, and you have to think a little bit. And dealing with complexity, dealing with different athletes, different age groups, it's really great to have objective data. It's really great to be able to quickly test them, to portably test them, right? You have everything and anything on an app nowadays, right? You can have the pulse on an app. You can have pocket radar on an app. You can have ArmCare on an app. Like you can literally have everything on an app on your phone. So it's very easy to do. And, and measuring distances on your app, everything, you can do everything now. So that's where I think we need to step up in the next 5 to 10 years. Is the amateur athlete needs to be better served, to help them not only to mitigate injury, but to help them return to throw. And because their careers are on the line too. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people have walked up to me. And you probably have had it. When you're a major leaguer, people always want to tell you their baseball story. Oh, well, I played in high school, right? And it's great. I love it. I love hearing people's. There's some really fun ones too. But I have heard a lot. I was really good until I blew out or until I got injured. And I hate hearing that. Not because I don't want to listen to that story. I hate hearing that someone's career got ended because of an injury, because I've been on the brink of that before. Yep. And it's, I want people to not to happen to people. I want people to make it to college, get their college paid for, experience professional baseball if that's a dream or aspiration. Make the high school team, right? Like I can't tell you like what it can do to a kid if they're not on the high school team and they make the high school team, what that can do to their life, like giving them a brotherhood to grow up in and just, be boys with. Whereas, I didn't make the team and now I'm, and nothing against that. But like baseball has changed my life, and I know it can change lives of others. And there's just so much on the line when it comes to what we're talking about. There's just so much on the line, and I think when you think about it in that context of what it's done for you, what it's done for you, what it's done for every single person in this room right now, you realize like, okay, I need to do what is best for the athlete in front of me. I need to do what is best for the guy I'm not working with, which is understanding this on a deeper level. And we do have about 5 minutes left before we're done. If you guys want to wrap it up, we can. Are there anything else that you guys want to do a little 5-minute segment on to finish this?
Yeah, I'll go real quick just to piggyback off what you just said. So I think another thing that we kind of stand on, and something that we say is like always evolving, right? So like I want to challenge everyone, not just in this room, but like in the industry. Like if that is like at the forefront there, like I feel like baseball is going to be in a better place to challenge yourself, to learn and grow more in other aspects and get outside of your bubble just a little bit. Because the better we can collectively connect the pieces, the more people we're going to help, and the better the stories are going to be. Obviously, guys are going to get hurt. It's going to happen. But like if we can improve on it, I think that's huge. And then the printed out throwing program. Hate to end on a negative here, but like, that's just not cool. I think that, if you really care, you're going to put the time in and try to put the athlete in a better spot. I know that, you kind of get into like insurance companies and, the structure of the medical system and like what that looks like. And it's like, yeah, I get it. But, if you're out there and you have an opportunity to have a positive impact, I just want to challenge you in that way to think outside the box and try to find a way to be better for the people that you have to work with. So,
yeah. Do you have anything?
I think for me, in the end of it, I want people who are listening to this, people in the industry, to have coaching humility. Be okay with sharing what doesn't work. You can cherry pick here and there what has been like a player that, X, Y, and Z work for them, but really dig deep and be open to say, this hasn't worked for me. Help someone else, not by saying what did work, but what doesn't, so that you can guide them to the better path. And the other thing too is stop guessing when you can assess. There's so many technologies out there that can allow you to be more data-led. And I understand our subjective opinion is important, but you definitely you need objective data to give the right feedback and to guide yourself in creating more individualized programs.
Yeah. You guys nailed it. That was so much fun today talking with you guys. Again, Jeremy Kivel, Ryan Crotin, Tejay Antone, thank you guys for joining us today. That is the Kova Sports Brick by Brick podcast. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to us and we will answer them for you. Thanks, guys.